Welcome to the Ultimate Sports Blog podcast. It had just passed midnight here, and it is now Wednesday, April 11th, 2018. The NHL Stanley Cup playoffs will be underway in about 18 hours from now, maybe less than that. This podcast is all exclusive Stanley Cup playoff predictions round by round. I'll give you my Stanley Cup winner and Conn Smythe winner at the end of the podcast. First round begins tomorrow. I'm going to start in the East. Tampa Bay Lightning, your Atlantic Division winners, against your second wildcard New Jersey Devils. The Lightning are back among the league's elite teams after a disappointing season a year ago in which they were in the lottery. The Devils are back in the playoffs after 5 years in the lottery. The Bolts are an elite offensive team led by Steven Stamkos, Nikita Kucherov, and Braden Point. And the Devils are a solid offensive team too, led by Taylor Hall, Nico Hischier, and Kyle Palmieri. The Bolts' defense is improved with the trade acquisition of Ryan McDonough to go with Victor Hedman, Anton Stralman, Mikhail Sergachev, and Dan Girardi to form a nice fivesome, and the Devils' defense is improved with the trade acquisition of Sami Vatanen, who's been a big help to the Devils' defense. Andrei Vasilevsky has had a good season in net and is a candidate for the Vezina Trophy, and Keith Kincaid has done very well in net for the Devils, filling in for the injured Corey Schneider, and Kincaid should be and will likely be the starter for the playoffs. Hall, who's a Hart Trophy candidate, could very well be the best player in this series, but the Bolts are the deeper and better team and have the advantage in net with Vasilevsky. The prediction? The Lightning in 6 games. Boston Bruins against the Toronto Maple Leafs in an original 6 Atlantic Division rivalry. This is the best series of the first round. The Bruins could have been playing the Devils, but they lost their season finale against the Panthers to end up playing the Leafs, who are back in the playoffs for a second straight season under Mike Babcock. The Bruins are great offensively, led by Brad Marchand, Patrice Bergeron, David Pastrnak, and trade acquisition Rick Nash. And Nash will be back for the playoffs after missing the last 11 games. The Maple Leafs are great offensively too, led by Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner, and William Nylander. The Bruins defense is really good, led by veteran Zdeno Chara and rookie Charlie McAvoy. The Leafs defense is solid too, led by Jake Gardiner and Morgan Riley. Both teams have solid goaltending with Tuukka Rask for the Bruins and Frederik Andersen for the Leafs. The best player in the series could very well be Matthews, but the Bruins are just a deeper team this time around, and I like them to win a classic of a series. The prediction? Bruins in 7 games. To the Metropolitan Division, your 1-seeded Washington Capitals against the first wildcard Columbus Blue Jackets. The Caps have won 3 straight division titles and have home ice in the first 2 rounds yet again. The Jackets are back in the postseason for the second straight season under John Tortorella. The Caps are still great offensively, led by Alex Ovechkin, Nick Backstrom, TJ Oshie, and Evgeny Kuznetsov. The Jackets are really good offensively too, led by Artemi Panarin, Cam Atkinson, and rookie Pierre-Luc Dubois. The Caps are really good defensively, led by John Carlson and Dmitry Orlov, as well as the Jackets, led by Seth Jones and Zach Werenski. Braden Holtby has been mediocre this season, and the Caps made a ballsy move today by making backup Philip Glauber the Game 1 starter. Sergei Bobrovsky is a candidate for the Vezina Trophy, as he usually is. Despite the goalie change for the Capitals, they're the better team here, led by Ovechkin, and I like them to advance. The prediction? Capitals in 6 games. Metropolitan Division matchup, 2-seeded Pittsburgh Penguins against 3-seeded Philadelphia Flyers. This is right up there with Bruins Leafs for the best first-round series. The Pens are looking to three-peat as Stanley Cup champions to form somewhat of a mini dynasty. The Flyers are in the playoffs for the 3rd time in 5 seasons, as they had to take them until the final game of the season to clinch this year. The Pens are still loaded offensively, led by Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin, and Phil Kessel, who have all been outstanding this season. The Flyers are also loaded offensively, led by Claude Giroux, Jacob Voracek, and Sean Couturier. The Pens are still solid defensively, led by Chris Letang and Ali Mata, and the Flyers aren't bad defensively either, led by Shane Gostisbehere. Matt Murray is really good in net for the Pens, and the Flyers are going to roll with a Brian Elliott and Peter Mrazek platoon in net. This is going to be a classic series, and I like Crosby and the Pens here, as well as the goaltending advantage that Murray has over the platoon of Elliott and Mrazek. The prediction, Penguins in 7 games. Western Conference. One-seeded Central Division and President's Trophy winning Nashville Predators against the second wildcard, Colorado Avalanche. The Preds, after losing the Stanley Cup final a year ago, are now President's Trophy winners and want to get back to the final this year. The Avs, after being the worst team in the league a year ago, are here in the playoffs for the first time since 2014. The Preds are loaded offensively, led by Philip Forsberg, Victor Evridson, and Ryan Johansson. And the Avs are very good offensively too, led by Hart Trophy candidate Nathan MacKinnon, Mikko Rantanen, and Gabriel Landeskog. The Preds' defense is among the best in the league, led by Roman Josi and PK Subban. The Avs' defense isn't that bad either, led by Tyson Barrie. Pekka Rinne has been outstanding in net this season for the Preds, and the Avs lost Semyon Varlamov for the season with the knee injury, and now Jonathan Bernier is their starter. The Preds are just flat out better, and I like them to pull off a sweep, although a 5-game series isn't out of the question. The prediction, Predators in 4 games. Central Division matchup, 2-seeded Jets against 3-seeded Minnesota Wild. The Jets are back in the playoffs after missing out the last 2 seasons. The Wild are back in the playoffs yet again for the 6th year in a row. The Jets are great offensively, led by Patrick Laine and Blake Wheeler. The Wild are really good offensively too, led by Eric Staal, Jason Zucker, and Mikael Granlund. The Jets' defense is solid, led by Dustin Byfuglien, but the Wild have a really good defense, led by Jared Spurgeon and Matthew Dumba, but they did lose Ryan Sutter for the season due to an ankle injury. Connor Hellebuck has been outstanding in net this season for Winnipeg, and Devin Dubnyk is really good in net as well for the Wild. This would have been a more interesting series if the Wild had a healthy roster, but I think the Jets sneak by the Wild to advance. The prediction, the Jets in 6 games. Pacific Division, 1-seeded Vegas Golden Knights against the wild-card Los Angeles Kings. The Golden Knights were supposed to be among the league's worst teams, but here they are in the playoffs in their inaugural season. The Kings are back in the postseason after missing out a season ago and are under new coach John Stevens. The Golden Knights are really good offensively, led by William Karlsson, Jonathan Marchessault, David Perron, and Riley Smith. The Kings are good offensively too, led by Anze Kopitar, Dustin Brown, and Tyler Toffoli. The Golden Knights aren't too bad defensively, led by Nate Schmidt and Colin Miller. The Kings are really good defensively, led by Drew Doughty, Alec Martinez, and Jake Muzzin. Marc-Andre Fleury has been in big games before in net when he was on the Pens, and he's had a fine season with Vegas, and that will help the Knights. Jonathan Quick has won 2 cups with the Kings, and he's usually good in playoff hockey. This was a tough call, but I like the Kings in their experience to pull off somewhat of an upset. The prediction, Kings in 6 games. Pacific Division, 2-seeded Anaheim Ducks against 3-seeded San Jose Sharks. This is the first round most underrated series. Ducks are in the playoffs for the 6th straight season, and the Sharks are back in the postseason for the 3rd year in a row under Peter DeBoer. The Ducks are really good offensively, led by Rickard Rakell, Corey Perry, and Ryan Getzlaf. The Sharks are also really good offensively, led by Joe Pavelski and Logan Couture. The Ducks are really good defensively, led by Hampus Lindholm and Josh Manson, but Cam Fowler is out for at least this round with a shoulder injury. The Sharks' defense is underrated, led by Brett Burns and Mark-Edward Vlasic. Both goalies are underrated in John Gibson for the Ducks and Martin Jones with the Sharks. These teams are very evenly matched, and with home ice advantage, give me the Ducks, although I don't feel as great about it if Fowler's out the entire series. The pick, Ducks in 7 games. Round 2, Tampa Bay Lightning against the Boston Bruins. Tampa has, I mentioned, a really good offense, a really good defense. So does Boston. Tampa has a net advantage with Andrei Vasilevsky over Tuukka Rask. Rask wasn't great this year, but he's a big game goalie. Vasilevsky's awesome. And I like Vasilevsky to be the difference in this series as the Bolts advance to the conference final. And I would not bet my life on that because the Bruins are a really good team in their own right. So give me the Bolts in 7 over the Boston Bruins. On the Metropolitan side of the bracket, for the 2nd straight year, 1-seeded Washington Capitals against 2-seeded Pittsburgh Penguins. The Capitals might have Philip Garber in net from this series, depending on how it goes against Columbus, assuming they get by them and Gaubauer plays well. Murray has been in a ton of big games for Pittsburgh already. Pittsburgh's just loaded offensively. Their defense isn't as good. John Carlson's had a breakout year for Washington and is a finalist for the Norris Trophy. This just feels like the same story every year for the Capitals. They always lose in the first or second round. Pittsburgh's better in big spots, so give me the Penguins in what should be another classic series. The pick, Penguins in 7 games. Western Conference Central Division, 2-seeded Winnipeg Jets against 1-seeded Nashville Predators. I mentioned how good the Preds are offensively and defensively before. Pekka Rinne has been in big games before and is great in net. Connor Hellebuck, I mentioned for Winnipeg, I think is the most improved goalie in the league. He's going to be a star for years to come. Patrick Laine is a superstar already. The Jets' defense isn't really that great, and I think that's where the Jets will get exposed here in round 2 against what I think is a better Predators team. The Jets are certainly a team on the rise, no doubt about it. But the Preds, as I mentioned, are just flat out better, led by that outstanding defense and goaltending. So give me the Predators in 6 games over the Winnipeg Jets. And in the Pacific Division, you have the wild card Kings against 2-seeded Ducks. The in-state rivalry, these two teams absolutely despise each other. I mentioned that the Ducks are really good offensively. I forgot to mention Adam Henrique, who they acquired in the Sami Vatanen trade. He's played pretty well with Anaheim. He's worked out well. The Ducks could very well have Cam Fowler back in time for this series. And on the flip side, you have Los Angeles with that great defense. Their offense has improved. Dustin Brown's had a career year. And Tyler Toffoli, as I mentioned before, has been great this season for LA. Jonathan Quick's been in big games before. John Gibson, I mentioned, very underrated goalie. This was a hard call. Either team can win, but give me, with Cam Fowler possibly back for the series, the healthy Ducks to advance to the conference finals. So give me the Ducks in 6 games over the Los Angeles Kings. Conference finals, Eastern Conference. Pittsburgh Penguins against Tampa Bay Lightning. This is what mostly everybody expects. Tampa Bay with home ice advantage this time around. Pittsburgh and Tampa Bay met 2 years ago in the conference finals. Maybe let's hope Steven Stamkos is healthy this time around. Stamkos, I mentioned Kucherov and Point. Tyler Johnson, that's a really good offensive team. Pittsburgh's loaded offensively. I mentioned Malkin and Crosby and Kessel. You have Jake Gunsell and Connor Sheary as well. And then Tampa Bay has the defensive edge with McDonough and Hedman and Strawman and Sergachev. And Pittsburgh lost some guys defensively, and they're weak in that area now, which I think will come back to bite him against Tampa this time around, as I like Vasilevsky and company to advance to the Stanley Cup Finals for the first time since 2015, as the Pittsburgh run of consecutive Stanley Cup Finals comes to an end. So give me the Tampa Bay Lightning in a 7-game classic over the 2-time defending champion Pittsburgh Penguins. Western Conference, Pacific Division 2-seed Anaheim Ducks against the Central Division 1-seed Nashville Predators. This would be a great conference final. 2 really, really good teams when they're healthy. The Ducks got off to a slow start this season, mainly because of injury. They'll have Fowler back at this point to go with Lindholm and Manson on their defense. The Preds have the loaded defense at Roman Josi and PK Subban. Both teams are really good offensively. And their goaltending is great too with John Gibson for Anaheim, who I think is one of the more underrated goalies in the league, as I said before. PK Rinne's been in big games before. And for the second straight year, give me the Predators to go to the Stanley Cup Final. So the pick, Predators in 6 games. Stanley Cup Final. President's Trophy winning, 1-seed, Western Conference, Nashville Predators against the Eastern Conference 1-seed, Tampa Bay Lightning. So I went not totally chalk, but the Stanley Cup Finals chalk. 2 outstanding teams, 2 great offensive teams, 2 great outstanding defensive teams, 2 great goalies. very evenly matched teams. You can easily make a Tampa Bay case. You can make a Nashville case. My preseason pick before the season was the Nashville Predators. I am standing by that. So give me the Predators to win the 2018 Stanley Cup Final, led by their great defensive core, Roman Josi, PK Subban, the great goaltending of Pekka Rinne, and their great offensive core, led by Victor Friedson, Philip Forsberg, and Ryan Johansson, as the Predators win their first Stanley Cup in franchise history. Peter Laviolette should be very proud of the year they've had. The pick, Predators in 7 games over the Tampa Bay Lightning. Conn Smythe winner, give me Roman Josi, who I think's very super underrated and doesn't get mentioned enough in terms of the top defenseman in the league. That was a fun podcast to do the Stanley Cup Final bracket prediction. I'll be back tomorrow with recapping everything, what goes on in all the sports, and look ahead to tomorrow's slate on the Stanley Cup playoffs schedule. I hope you guys have a nice